As is customary, once former President Trump officially becomes the Republican Party's presidential nominee this summer, he will start to receive briefings from intelligence agencies. Now, this practice was started back in the 1950s by President Harry Truman to ensure a smooth transition to power, so technically it's business as usual here. But this is the first time that a candidate will receive those briefings while under indictment for mishandling classified documents. And that underscores the importance of getting some resolution in the classified documents case itself. Now, we still do not know when that trial will actually happen. It has been 1 week since Judge Aileen Cannon heard arguments on scheduling that trial. Special counsel Jack Smith wants the trial to start in July, while Trump's attorneys say the earliest the trial should start is August, although they would really prefer never. Judge Cannon's ultimate decision here has the potential to create chaos on Trump's legal calendar. The later she schedules her trial, the more likely she is to block any January 6 election interference trial from going to trial before the election. And now we have learned that next Thursday, Judge Cannon will hear arguments by Team Trump to dismiss the documents case altogether. David Latt joins me now. He's a former federal prosecutor, a columnist at Bloomberg Law, and the host of the Original Jurisdiction podcast. It's great to see you, David. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So how do you read the tea leaves on the fact that Judge Cannon is scheduling a hearing on a motion to dismiss before she's even set a trial date? Is that not a great sign for people who are hoping to see this trial come to fruition?
Well, she has a lot of work to get through because the Trump team has basically filed a kitchen sink of motions to dismiss. So she's kind of handling them piecemeal. She's going to tackle 2 of them in the coming week, but then there are a whole bunch after that.
Do you think the idea that she won't even, I mean, I guess, is it a window into her psyche that the scheduled trial date remains so nebulous? Or should we just think this is a matter of housekeeping? She's going to tick through the list of these pretrial motions before she actually decides that.
I think she will probably set a trial date in between because, again, there are a whole bunch of these motions and there are a lot of moving parts here. So I think we'll get a trial date soonish, but we may also have a better sense of the trial date once she rules on some of these motions, which would affect the trial date. I don't think these motions are going to get granted, although with Judge Cannon, you can't be sure.
Well, yeah, and let's talk about that because she is accepting amicus briefs, which is friend of the court briefs, sort of supporter briefs for Trump's case as he tries to seek a motion to dismiss. Now, I always thought amicus briefs were like yearbook signatures, like the more you had, the better it was, because it could just say, like, I got a lot of people on my side. But she said that she thinks the amicus briefs may be of considerable help to her. It is not going out on a limb to say this is a judge who does not have a lot of experience in a case like this. And I am concerned, as I think other people might be, that she would be leaning too heavily on pro-Trump amicus briefs in a motion to dismiss.
So I wouldn't be, there are things to worry about here, but I don't know that I would be super worried about that. That language comes from the rules in the Supreme Court regarding amicus briefs, and there's not a similar rule for district courts or trial courts where Judge Cannon is. So it's kind of like a copy-paste thing. I think she's basically just saying, okay, let him in, it's fine. Now, look, she may be quite susceptible to the argument in those briefs, which is that Jack Smith is not lawfully appointed, but I wouldn't read too much into her agreeing to have them filed.
Do you, you said on the Stay Tuned podcast that you think Judge Cannon is on thin ice. There's been a lot of talk about whether she could be taken off this case entirely. Where do you think she stands now?
So I don't think Jack Smith wants to remove her. I think he would rather not do that because it is something of an extreme measure. She did get some adverse rulings from the 11th Circuit, including from Trump appointees twice. And so that was in the pre-indictment phase of this case when it was a civil case brought by Trump, totally bizarre kind of situation. She ruled in favor of him in a really wacky way. And so that's why I think if she does something else, you know, it's sort of like a 3 strikes and you're out kind of situation. But again, I don't think Jack Smith wants to do that.
That would theoretically slow things down, would it not?
Yes, exactly. They would have to reassign. They would have to find another judge. I think he's kind of keeping his fingers crossed, but I think we're also aware of the possibility that, yes, Judge Cannon could go rogue again.
Well, yeah, and I think that then there's the whole question of what she can do to the rest of the calendar. Let's just start this conversation with or let's continue this conversation with an opinion you hold that I think is a hard one for people who seek accountability for Donald Trump to hear. But talk to me about your view on the chances that the federal election interference case actually goes to trial before November.
I think that's under 5%, really low. Of course, we now have this Supreme Court immunity appeal that's sort of gumming up the situation. That's probably not going to be decided by the Supreme Court until June. Then we do have some weeks or months of trial prep, as Judge Chutkan, who's presiding over that D.C. case, has stated. Plus, this Mar-a-Lago documents case could go to trial in July or August, in which case it would bump the January 6 D.C. case.
Is there any way the Mar-a-Lago case, that Judge Cannon can schedule the Mar-a-Lago case for the late summer, block the D.C. election interference case, and then delay the Mar-a-Lago case after that? I mean, I'm just looking for the worst case possibility. But is that possible?
Yes, because trial judges have a lot of discretion, have a lot of leeway in setting these trial dates, and something took longer than expected, ruling on the motions. There's the classified documents in this case are creating a lot of complexities. What you outline, Alex, could definitely happen.
Oh, my God. It's Friday night, David Lack, please. Okay, well, we're going to come back to you many times over, and perhaps your opinion will change as we get more information.
With that note, I am going to ask you to join me as recognizing President Trump as our nominee and the next president of the United States. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. I'm not even going to ask for the noes. Okay.
I'm not even going to ask for the noes. That was Ronna Romney McDaniel's final act as chair of the Republican National Committee. What might technically be considered election fraud. Not even ask for the noes. McDaniel officially stepped down today at the RNC's spring meeting after she was boxed out by Donald Trump, in part because she refused to fully embrace the big lie. The man replacing her is Michael Whatley, a passionate election denier, while Trump's daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, was officially named RNC co-chair. Other than being a Trump, Lara Trump's qualifications for this role appear to be this.
God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. Lara Trump is the embodiment of this truth.
Now that the Trump takeover is complete, the RNC apparently intends to allocate its resources towards election denialism.
We are going to make sure that every single penny of every dollar raised goes towards one goal, which is winning. How do we do that? We have to have election integrity like we've never seen before.
We have also hired and placed election integrity directors in battleground states who are already recruiting and training tens of thousands of volunteers to serve as poll judges, workers, and observers, who will act as real-time monitors whenever votes are being cast and counted. And we will do more.
Joining me now is the chair of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison. Chairman, it is great to see you. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about the RNC at this moment, but I do want to start with the idea that their winning strategy, as announced today, is by hiring a core of election integrity poll watchers. What does that tell you about how Republicans think they can win the 2024 election?
Well, maybe they should use those poll watchers to watch their bank account, because what Lara said earlier was that they were going to use all the money to help Donald Trump on his lawsuits. It really is shameful that right now the heads of the RNC is an election denier and a grifting in-law. That's exactly what they have right now. So they can use their resources all that they want on those issues. They can use that credit line that they just got because they're broke right now. But bottom line is this: Joe Biden's speech was so good last night that it set records in terms of our fundraising at the DNC and in the campaign. As they say, he ate last night and left no crumbs. It was a masterclass in terms of strength, in terms of focus, in terms of moving this country forward and protecting our freedoms. And so, we are really ready at the DNC to make sure that we help make the contrast between the hope that Joe Biden brings and the chaos that we see coming from the Republican side. I mean, you think about this. We are months away from this major presidential election, and they just got rid of their chair to bring two really unqualified people to lead their party. So kudos to them. I'm the biggest cheerleader for Lara Trump. Go, girl, go. Do your thing. Spend all that money on those lawsuits because the DNC, we're going to be working on supporting the largest voter protection program we've had, making sure that our state parties are well funded, making sure that we have boots on the ground so that we can do the voter education, the voter registration, the voter mobilization, and then to protect those voters once they cast their ballots.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the legal bills in a second, but I mean, I am sort of shocked by the fact that they're effectively announcing that the strategy here isn't investing in sort of grassroots efforts or, you know, whatever it might be, but rather poll watchers, which, you know, in previous years has in some ways been a placeholder for voter intimidation. As the chair of the DNC, does that worry you at all that the RNC is investing so heavily in individuals that may actually try and dissuade people from exercising their right to vote?
Well, you know, for years now, Alex, we've been investing because we know the dirty tricks that the Republican Party plays. They don't, you know, the last election, they didn't have a platform. So they weren't running on policy. The only thing that they can run on is fear. It is fear and intimidation, making people scared about voting. And then once they get to the polls, trying to scare them there. That's why we built the biggest voter protection program that we've ever had at the DNC. And we didn't start this year. This is something that we've been doing for the past few years. And we're going to continue to build on that. At the same time, we're still organizing. We're still educating our voters. We're still making sure that they have everything that they possibly need when they get to those polls. And we are going to, you know, buckle up. I know they're going to spend their money on lawsuits to save Donald Trump. But we are also saving our resources because if we have to take them to court to make sure that every American can cast their ballot and to do so unencumbered, then we'll do just that. But we're ready for them because we understand that this election is so important. This is about protecting the freedom of all Americans, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and everything in between.
You mentioned the legal bills. I should say that our own Vaughn Hilliard from NBC is reporting that Chris LaCivita, who's set to take over the sort of chief operating duties and is also a big player in the Trump campaign, he says the RNC will not use party funds to cover Trump-related legal expenses. No, LaCivita said in South Carolina, and then asked to clarify, he responded, effing no. I can't say that word on this family program. They seem pretty sure that they're not going to be using RNC funds to cover Donald Trump's legal bills. But setting that aside, what is, again, astounding to me is that RNC members are on the record saying, yeah, we'd like to use the RNC coffers to pay for Donald Trump's lawyers. I mean, what does that tell you about sort of the health of the Republican Party that it's so invested in one wealthy man's fortunes?
Well, not only RNC members, Lara Trump has said that she was intending to do just that, and that was fine because the voters would be okay with that. Again, it is chaos. You look at Republicans at the RNC, it's chaos. You look at the Republicans in the House of Representatives, it is chaos. The Republican Party is about chaos. They're not about progress. You know, Joe Biden gets up every single day thinking about how can he improve the quality of life of all of America's people. Donald Trump and his MAGA Republican Party, either in the House or at the RNC, it's all about payback and retribution and revenge. That's not moving the ball forward. That's not improving the quality of life of the people in this country. And so that is the contrast that we have in this election. And bottom line, that is why Democrats and Joe Biden will prevail in November.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban wrapped up his visit to the United States tonight, not with a sit-down in the White House with President Biden, but with a visit to Mar-a-Lago for a confab with one of his biggest fans, Donald Trump. That comes one day after Orban met with Trump whisperer Steve Bannon and participated in a discussion with the president of the Heritage Foundation, the conservative think tank. Those moments were apparently so memorable that Prime Minister Orban made a sizzle reel of them for his Instagram followers. Now, if there was any misunderstanding about the point of Orban's visit, check out the title of his panel yesterday, The Future of Relations Between the U.S. and Hungary. And from the looks of it, the prime minister is very much hedging his bets on a future that involves Donald Trump. Joining me now is Jacob Heilbrunn, editor of The National Interest and author of the new book, America Last, The Right's Century-Long Romance with Foreign Dictators. Mr. Heilbrunn, thank you so much for being here, and this book is coming at such an important time. I'd love if you could talk a little bit about the sort of relationship that I think national security hawks have been examining in recent days between Vladimir Putin, Viktor Orban, and Donald Trump, and the degree to which, as The Guardian reports, there are legitimate fears that Orban could use his access to the Kremlin to effectively promote Russian propaganda, especially regarding Ukraine, to Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump has not been monogamous in his love for foreign dictators. He has his bromance with Vladimir Putin. Now he has a man crush on the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. And for Orban, Trump is a deliverance because it allows him to use his small landlocked country in Hungary and play the role of intermediary between Putin and Trump. And the question today, the most important question hanging over this meeting with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, is what did Orban communicate to him about the future of Ukraine and Putin's intentions? Because Trump has announced that he could solve the Ukraine crisis in 24 hours, which essentially means handing it over on a silver platter to Vladimir Putin. It would be very interesting to learn exactly what Orban told Trump today.
Yeah, well, we will probably soon find out, because when Donald Trump says something, the Republican Party usually falls in line. Beyond just Ukraine, though, it feels like Orban's style, if you will, of illiberal democracy is more easily mapped onto the politics of the Republican Party compared to Putin. Can you just talk a little bit about the way Orban governs his country and how Republicans and why Republicans have so thoroughly embraced it?
Definitely. I was at CPAC last year, though I was banned from attending, and the speakers were worshipful about Hungary. What do they admire? They admire that there is no independent media in Hungary anymore. It has been sold off to Orban's cronies. The judicial system has been eviscerated. They have elections in Hungary, but they're a sham. All of these things serve as a blueprint for Trump's own designs in the United States. He has said that Orban and I are almost like twins, and I don't think anyone should have any illusions. If Trump were to come to power, he would try to implement what Orban has done in Hungary, which means not shooting, not killing people, throwing them out of the windows, as Putin does, but a much more subtle form of eviscerating American democracy and, above all, the rule of law.
I do wonder what you think about, it's not just sort of the MAGA crowd. There are kind of Republican institutions like the Heritage Foundation, which has always been arch conservative, but used to be a place where neocons went. That they are now hosting Viktor Orban. And there seems to be a sort of meeting of the minds happening there. And what are the implications more broadly for a part of the Republican Party that has been less obviously MAGAfied?
Well, it's no question that the Heritage Foundation made a conscious decision to jump onto the MAGA bandwagon, and it did start as an insurgent movement inside the conservative movement and inside the Republican Party. In a sense, actually, it's returning to its roots. What I try to show in the book is that for the past 100 years, there has been this tradition in the Republican Party of dictator worship. So it's not totally a surprise that Trump and the Heritage Foundation would embrace this. In fact, it's the culmination of an older Republican tradition.
Yes, the Paul Weyrich and the entire sort of grassroots new right movement that was born in the late 70s and early 80s are they're back, if you will. It's a righteous sort of battlefield soldier mentality of taking no prisoners and seizing the day. And I just wonder, you know, as we talk about these parallels between what happened before and what is happening now, you spoke to the Washington Post about the sort of the connection between the fascists and the isolationists in and around World War II and some of the positions that Republicans are taking today vis-a-vis Ukraine. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. We're hearing the exact same language. In the late 1930s, we were told that Great Britain was doomed to defeat and that we should take the side of Nazi Germany. And today we are told Ukraine is doomed to defeat and we might as well cut a deal with Vladimir Putin. Nothing could be further from the truth. if we aid Ukraine, it will win this war. But you have these same defeatist appeasement voices that we heard then. We hear them now. They were wrong then. They're wrong today.